As an artist, I often find myself laser focused on the details. It's easy to get caught up in perfecting the little things.
And I will stay in a comfortable silence. I won't talk about myself in violence. Ever since you.
But every once in a while, I try to zoom out and get some perspective. Alright, time for some backstory. I originally bought this lens for vlogging, but as soon as I put it on my camera and started using it, I realized that it had so much more potential. You see, as a creative, I often focus on the details. It's part of who I am as an artist. I would even go so far to say that my style lives in the details. I often find myself capturing the little things that are often overlooked or completely missed. And you see, it's this obsession with perfecting the little details that has honed my style and made it unique. But the thing is, as an artist and as a person, sometimes the most valuable thing you can do is zoom out. This is the Canon RF 16mm f2.8 lens. This tiny little thing is one of the widest lenses I've ever used, capable of producing images so wide that they often look completely abnormal. This thing produces frames that you don't often see. Shooting with a 50mm or even a telephoto gives you a very tight and cropped in perspective, very similar to how we see things with our own eyes. As soon as you put one of these on your camera and start shooting, everything changes. Suddenly, the entire world opens up, and you begin seeing things in an entirely new light. This thing challenges not only your perspective, but your creativity as well. And I guess the most ironic part is, it's this tiny little lens that gives you such a big perspective. The first question that comes to most photographers or videographers' minds when they think of ultra-wide lenses is, do you get the fisheye effect? Well, the footage you're watching right now was completely shot on this lens. It doesn't have any editing or post-production distortion added at all. This is completely straight out of the lens. Does it have the fisheye effect? I'll let you be the judge of that. From my limited experience with this lens, I noticed hardly any fisheyeing at all, even when I was taking incredibly detailed close-ups. As far as price goes, this thing will run you $410 Canadian, which is an incredible price for such a powerful lens. Now, are there better ultra-wide lenses out there? Of course there are. But for the price and the size, what you get in this lens is quite phenomenal. Personally, as a creative and even as a person, I often forget to take a step back and look at the big picture. With this lens on, it's impossible not to. I think one of the biggest challenges as an artist is trying to convey the emotion and the story behind what you're trying to portray. And oftentimes when you're shooting in a huge landscape, something that's just so majestic and surreal, it's hard to convey how awe-inspiring and massive that landscape is. But with a lens like this on, the game just changed. You now have the ability to show the immense vastness of some of the most incredible landscapes that you could find. Photography often teaches me life lessons that are pretty surprising. I think it's easy to get caught up in the minute details and perfecting the little things. And sometimes the most inspiring and incredible art is found when you just zoom out and get some perspective on things. I think it's the same thing with life, to be honest. You can really focus in on something, and it's necessary to hone your craft and get good at it and build skill. But sometimes you just have to take a step back and get some perspective on life. It's easy to get burnt out as a creative because you get caught up in the day-to-day, All you think about is the things that you do on a daily basis, day in, day out. And sometimes all it takes is just taking a step back, taking a look at where you are and what you're doing there in the first place. I think for the price, the Canon RF 16mm f2.8 lens is an incredible option, not only as a photographer, but as an artist and as a creative. Sometimes it's not easy to share how you see the world, but lenses like these give you the freedom to express how you see things, give you the freedom to express the unique perspective that you wish others could see. In many ways, this tiny little lens sums up exactly what photography is to me. It's a way to share your perspective with the rest of the world. It's a way to share how you see things in a way that inspires other people. And I think the best part about this lens is it allows me to take a step back and realize how small I am in such a huge world filled with so many other people. In the beginning, I found it frustrating to shoot with because I was always catching extra clutter around the edges. If I went out to shoot a landscape, there was always people in the frame, or there was extra clutter in the frame that I didn't want to be there. With a super tight lens on, you don't have to worry about that. But when you have a wide angle lens, you have to come to terms with the fact that the world is full of things that you cannot control. A lot of the times we look at something and it's not as good as we want it to be. But coming to terms with how it looks and being okay with it is often more beautiful than capturing a perfect frame. And I think that's really what this lens has taught me, is to accept that photography is not about being perfect. Photography is about capturing the moments that inspire you and inspire everybody else. Now, as far as photography goes, I'm sure you can tell I'm incredibly happy with it. But my main question is, how does it hold up for vlogging? I mean, that is the reason why I bought it. And I think the only way to find out is to go and test it for ourselves. All right, so this is the first real-world vlogging test of the Canon RF 16mm f2.8. That's a mouthful. So I think the first question that most people have when talking about ultra-wide lenses is, does it have that, weird fisheye effect around the edges? And that can be a really big deal breaker, especially when you get into a lot of cheaper ultra-wide lenses. And for only $400, I was kind of expecting this lens to have a lot more fisheye. But when I first tested it out, I was really pleasantly surprised to find out that it's almost perfect without any post distortion at all, which is amazing. I think the best part about this lens is it's so light and compact. When you're vlogging, it can quickly turn into an arm workout if you have a big heavy setup, and especially if you're going handheld, a big heavy lens makes it that much harder to hold the camera steady and get, nice, smooth, stable footage. And so the smaller, more compact your setup can be, the better. Especially if you're traveling and you don't really want to have a big, huge, heavy setup, it's really great. I think my favorite part about this lens is how wide the aperture can go. When you're shooting on an f2.8 aperture, everything just looks super smooth, creamy, cinematic, and it's just a fantastic aperture. For me personally, the lower the aperture can go, the better. Now, a lot of people, if they're shooting on this lens, are going to be using it to shoot landscapes, and so they're going to have a very narrow aperture, somewhere between f8 and 11. And when you're shooting something so wide, you just want to be able to capture all the details right to the very edges of that photo. So in conclusion, would I recommend this lens? Absolutely I would. I think for the price, it's an amazing ultra-wide lens for pretty much any skill level, whether you're a beginner or even a professional. I think this lens will really exceed your expectations. And if you just want this for vlogging like me, I think this is gonna more than deliver on what you need it to. And so I'm really excited to vlog with this lens, get into some more ultra-wide photography and just continue to change up my perspective and challenge myself to create art that I don't usually create. I often get focused in on the details, and so challenging myself to use this lens has really, really furthered who I am as a creative and who I am as a photographer. And so if you're interested in this lens, or if you're looking for an ultra-wide lens, a vlogging lens, definitely check this one out. I think you'll be super happy with it. And yeah, that's all I have for you today. So make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, do everything else that people bother you to do at the end of videos. So I'll see you in the next one.